I'm Jade Collins, the boxer from Texas who never knew how to sit still. At 22, the ring was my temple and sweat, my sacrifice. I grew up on the dusty streets of East Austin, where the heat of the asphalt seemed to cook the dreams of those who dared to dream big. My mother, a waitress with calloused hands, said that I was born with clenched fists, ready to fight with the world. And that's what I did from the day I stepped into Coach Marcus's old gymnasium, with peeling walls and the smell of worn leather impregnated in the air. Like the video, and tell us which state you're watching from. On that summer afternoon, the gym was stuffy, the ceiling fan spinning too slow to relieve the heat. Marcus, a man with black skin and eyes that seemed to see through you, watched me as I punched the punching bag. "You hit like you want to kill someone, girl," he said, his deep voice cutting through the sound of my blows. I stopped, sweat running down my face, and stared at him. "Maybe I do," I replied, with a crooked smile that he didn't reciprocate. He knew that I carried something more than anger, an emptiness that even I didn't understand. I wasn't like the other fighters. They followed the rules, studied the opponents, trained with precision. I beat with my heart, with the fury of someone who grew up hearing that I wasn't good enough. My mother raised me alone after my father, a failed gambler, left us with nothing but debt. Every punch I threw was for him, for the world, for myself. But that night, as I tied the bandages in my hands, I felt something new, a spark of ambition. The state championship was 3 months away and I wanted the belt. Marcus approached, holding a crumpled leaflet. "Do you want that?" he asked, pointing to the photo of the trophy. His eyes challenged me as if he knew I was about to take the bait. "I do," I replied, my voice steady, but with a tremor that I hoped he wouldn't notice. He shook his head, almost as if he were lamenting. "So you'll have to learn to fight with your head, not just with your fists. And Jade, be careful what you wish for." His words stayed with me like a warning that I still didn't understand. That night, lying on the thin mattress of my tiny apartment, I heard the noise of cars on the street and the distant echo of sirens. My heart was beating fast, not with fear but with something bigger, the chance to prove that I was more than the broken girl from East Austin. But, deep down, a voice whispered that the path to the title would be more dangerous than any fight in the ring. The gym became my second home, but never my home. The mold-stained walls and the constant sound of gloves against punching bags were familiar, but I still felt like an outsider. The other fighters, almost all men, looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "You don't belong here, Collins," said Tommy, a middleweight with an ego bigger than his right hook. I just smiled, adjusting the gloves. "Knock me out in the ring and I'll leave," I snapped, knowing he wouldn't have the courage to try. Marcus pitted me against Lena, an experienced fighter with scars who told stories of losses and victories. In the ring, she was a machine, precise, cold, as if every move was calculated. "Don't let her read you, Jade," Marcus shouted from the corner as I danced around her, my feet light on the canvas floor. But Lena was fast and her hook hit my ribs, stealing my breath. I fell to my knees, the world spinning, the taste of blood in my mouth. "Get up, girl." Marcus's voice was like thunder, but it was Lena's eyes, full of pity, that made me stand up. After training, I sat in the corner of the gym, my breathing still heavy, my pride wounded. Marcus approached, holding a bottle of water. "You're good, Jade, but you're too wild. Boxing is not just anger. It's strategy." I wanted to argue, to say that my anger was my strength, but something in his eyes made me shut up. He handed me an old notebook. "Write your opponents. Study them. Stop relying only on fists." It felt like a chain, an attempt to bind me to the rules I hated. That night, I went to the bar where my mother worked, the neon flashing on the facade like a tired heart. She was behind the counter, pouring beers to men who barely looked at her. "Are you okay, daughter?" he asked, wiping his hands on his apron. I wanted to tell you about the training, about the pain in my ribs, but I just nodded. "I'm trying, Mom." She smiled, but her eyes were filled with concern. "Just don't get lost in this ring, Jade. You are more than that." Back in my apartment, I opened Marcus's notebook. The pages were blank, waiting for me. I took a pen and wrote Lena's name, then stopped. My hand trembled, not from fatigue but from doubt. I could learn the rules, study the opponents, but what if it turned me into something I didn't recognize? The spark of ambition was still burning, but now there was a new weight, the fear of losing who I was. The following weeks were a blur of sweat and determination. I would wake up before dawn, running through the streets of Austin as the sun rose, the sky tinged with orange and pink. Every step was a reminder, I couldn't fail. In the gym, Marcus made me repeat sequences until my muscles screamed. "Jab, cross, dodge," he shouted as I faced off against sparring partners who seemed out to want to destroy me. My anger still guided my blows, but now I tried to listen to Marcus. I tried to think before I attacked. My first official preliminary championship fight was against a girl named Sarah, a blonde from Houston with a jab so fast it looked like a snake. The gym was packed, the air loaded with the smell of sweat and adrenaline. When the bell rang, I felt the blood pulsing in my veins, as if the ring was the only place where I belonged. Sarah was technical, but I was fierce. In the second round, I landed an uppercut that sent her reeling and the crowd roared. For the first time, I felt the taste of victory. But the glory was short-lived. After the fight, in the locker room, I saw Tommy talking to a man in a suit, a scout from the professional circuit. He pointed at me and his lips moved in words I didn't hear, but that made my stomach turn. "They don't like you, Jade," said Lena, who appeared next to me, wiping her face with a towel. "You're good, but you're unpredictable. It scares them." Her voice was calm, but there was something else, something she didn't say. That night, I dreamed of my father. He was in the stands, laughing as I fell into the ring, his face blurred with memory. I woke up with my heart racing, the sheet stuck to my skin. I knew that the scout was not the only obstacle. The championship was a world of unspoken rules, alliances and betrayals. And I, with my fists and my pride, was entering a game that I didn't yet understand. When I returned to the gym the next day, Marcus was waiting, arms crossed. "I heard about your struggle," he said, his voice low, almost dangerous. "You won, but it was lucky. If you want the title, you need to listen to me." He pointed to the notebook which I hadn't filled out yet. "Write, Jade, or you'll fall." His eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw fear in them. Not for me, but for something bigger, something he knew and I still didn't. Marcus's notebook began to come to life, but not as he wanted. Instead of strategies, I wrote down thoughts, fears, fragments of anger. Lena, quick dodge, likes counterattacks. Sarah, deadly jab but weak on defense. The words seemed insufficient, as if the paper could not contain what I felt. Every workout, every punch brought me closer to the title, but it also made me question, what was I really looking for? One night, while tying the bandages, I overheard a conversation in the hallway of the gym. "She's trouble, Marcus," said a voice I recognized as Tommy's. "No one is going to bet on her. She doesn't play fair." Marcus answered something I didn't hear, but the tone was cutting, as if he was defending something more than my reputation. When I left the locker room, they both fell silent, and Tommy gave me a look that was pure poison. "Be careful where you step, Collins," he muttered before walking away. The past started to catch up with me like a punch you don't see coming. My mother called me, her voice trembling. "Your father showed up here, Jade. He said he wants to see you." My heart stopped. He had disappeared by the time I was 10, leaving only broken promises and a shattered mother. "Tell him to go to hell," I replied, but my voice cracked. She sighed on the other end of the line. "He said he saw his fight on TV. You're proud, Jade." Proud? The word was an insult. In the next fight, against a veteran named Carla, I was unfocused. The gym seemed smaller, the lights brighter, the noise of the crowd like an unbearable hum. Carla hit me in the face in the first round and blood ran down my chin. "Focus, Jade." Marcus screamed, but all I saw was my father's face laughing in my dream. At halftime, Lena handed me a towel. "You're fighting with ghosts, not with her," he said, pointing to Carla. His eyes were gentle but firm. "Leave them behind." When the bell rang, something in me changed. Every punch I threw at Carla was a cry against my father, against the rules, against the world that wanted to bend me. I won by knockout in the third round, but when I left the ring I didn't feel joy. Just tiredness. And, deep down, the certainty that my father was not the only ghost I had to face. The preliminaries of the championship were ending, and I was among the favorites, something I never imagined. But fame brought looks, whispers, and a kind of pressure I didn't know how to carry. In the gym, the other fighters now treated me with grudging respect, but I felt the envy at every forced greeting. Even Lena, who had been my only ally, seemed more distant, her advice shorter, her looks more evasive. One night after practice, Marcus called me into his office, a cubicle with walls covered in posters of old fights. He was serious, holding a crumpled envelope. "That's come to you," she said, handing it to him. My name was written in crooked letters, and the sender was an address I didn't recognize. I opened the envelope with trembling hands and found a letter. It was his. My father. "I want to see you, Jade. I'm sick. I don't have much time." The words were like a punch in the stomach. I wanted to tear up the letter, but something made me read it to the end. He talked about the pride he felt, the fights he watched on TV, how I was his girl. Every word felt like a lie, but it still hurt. Marcus watched me, his eyes heavy. You don't have to do anything, Jade. But don't let that get you out of the ring. Her voice was firm, but there was a tenderness I had never seen. He knew what it was like to carry scars. That night, I went to my mother's bar. She was wiping glasses, her face tired under the dim neon light. He's really sick, Jade, she said, not looking at me. Cancer. I don't know how much time he has. I felt the ground disappear under my feet. Part of me wanted to laugh, to say that he deserved it, but another part, a part that I hated, felt sorry. I don't owe him anything, I murmured, more to myself than to her. My mother just nodded, but her eyes said what she didn't say. I had to decide. I returned to the gym with the letter burning in my pocket. In the ring, my blows were weaker, my head somewhere else. Lena noticed. You're letting him hit you again, she said during a sparring match. Who? I asked, pretending not to understand. She looked me in the eyes. You know who. And for the first time, I felt that Lena understood more than I wanted to admit. The championship was in the final stretch, and the gym looked like a cauldron of tension. The fights were now televised, and the whole of Austin seemed to be watching. I felt the weight of the looks, not only from the crowd but from people I had never met. The scout in the suit appeared again, this time accompanied by an older man, with hawk eyes and a smile that did not reach his face. They talked to Marcus, but their eyes were on me. My next opponent was Vanessa, a Dallas fighter known for playing dirty. She had a reputation for landing blows below the belt and taunting outside the ring. In the locker room before the fight, she approached me, the too sweet perfume invading my space. I heard about your father, Collins, she said, her voice mellifluous. What a shame, right? It must be hard to fight knowing he's dying. My blood boiled, but I didn't answer. She wanted to take me out of focus and I couldn't let her. In the ring, Vanessa was even worse than I imagined. His blows came with disguised elbows and the referee looked blind. In the second round, she landed a low punch that made me double in pain. The crowd booed, but the referee only gave a warning. Marcus shouted from the corner, "Keep your head, Jade." But the anger was taking over, and I knew that if I gave in, I would lose more than the fight. When the bell rang for the third round, I changed. Instead of attacking with fury, I used what Marcus taught me. I watched her movements, waited for the right moment. When Vanessa tried another dirty blow, I dodged and landed a hook that made her fall. The crowd erupted and I felt something new, control. But when I stepped out of the ring, I saw the man in the suit whispering something to the scout. They were not happy. That night, in my apartment, my father's letter was still on the table, untouched. I knew I needed to decide what to do with him, but the ring was consuming me. Each fight seemed to reveal a piece of me I didn't know, and another I feared. As the championship drew to a close, I felt that something bigger was at stake, something that even Marcus couldn't prepare for. The victory against Vanessa put me in the semifinals, but it also brought something I didn't expect: attention. My face was in local newspapers and strangers started stopping me on the street. "You're the boxing girl, aren't you?" said a man in the market, with a smile that seemed more curious than friendly. I smiled back, but inside I felt a knot. Fame was a chain and I didn't know if I wanted to wear it. In the gym, the tension grew. Tommy now barely spoke to me, but I caught him watching me as if he was expecting me to fail. Lena, on the other hand, seemed torn. During a training session, she pulled me to the side. "You're changing, Jade," she said, her voice low. "It's getting cold. Be careful not to become one of those machines in the circuit." Her words hurt because I knew she was right. Each fight took me away from who I was, but also brought me closer to the title. Marcus called me to a meeting with the scout, whose name I found out to be Richard. He was all fake smiles and bright promises. "You have potential, Jade," he said, drumming his fingers on the table. "But it needs to fit. Less spectacle, more discipline." I wanted to laugh in his face. Discipline? I was the girl who punched punching bags until my knuckles bled. But Marcus gave me a look that said, "Swallow your pride." That night, my mother called me again. "He's worse, Jade. He wants to see you before the final." I hung up the phone without answering, but her words echoed in my head. At the gym the next day I was unfocused and Marcus noticed. "You're not here," he said, stopping the practice. "If you want the title, you need to leave it behind." He didn't have to say my father's name. I knew who he was talking about. As I laced up my gloves for the next sparring match, I felt an emptiness grow in my chest. I was fighting for myself, for the title, for Austin. But what if, in the end, the price was to lose me? Marcus's notebook, now full of notes, seemed to mock me. I wrote down strategies, but I couldn't write down what really mattered, who I would be when this was all over. The semi-final was against Lena. I knew that day would come, but I was not prepared. In the locker room, while tying the bandages, she entered, her face serious. "No mercy, Jade," she said, her voice firm but with a trace of sadness. "You too," I replied, trying to sound confident. But inside I was divided. Lena had been my friend, my anchor. Now we were adversaries. The gym was packed, the lights shining brightly, the air filled with expectation. When the bell rang, Lena came with a bang, her jabs quick as lightning. I dodged, but her every blow felt personal, as if she was testing my soul. "You're better than that, Jade," she screamed in the second round after landing me with a hook that made my face burn. I didn't answer, but my fist spoke for me. In the third round I found a loophole. Lena let her guard down for a second, and my uppercut caught her by surprise. She fell and the referee started the count. His eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something beyond the fight: respect. She stood up, but the bell rang before I could finish. The decision was unanimous. I won. But when I left the ring, Lena pulled me into a hug. "You deserve it, Jade," she whispered. "But beware of what comes now." The crowd applauded, but I could barely hear. Marcus was in the corner, smiling for the first time in weeks. "You're almost there," he said, but his eyes were worried. Later, in the locker room, I found another letter from my father. "I'm going to be in the final, Jade. I want to see you champion." My heart raced, not with joy but with anger. He had no right to appear now. That night, I dreamed of the ring, but this time there was no opponent. Just me punching the void, while the crowd shouted a name that wasn't mine. I woke up with tears on my face, the certainty that the final would be more than a fight. It would be a settling of scores. The state championship final was scheduled, and Austin seemed to pulsate with anticipation. I was going to face Raquel, a fighter from San Antonio who was a local legend. Tall, muscular, with a look that cut like a knife, she was everything I wasn't. Disciplined, respected, predictable. "She's the system, Jade," Marcus told me in the gym as we watched videos of his fights. Unguarded. I shook my head, stomach tight. "It's not just her. That's all." He knew what I meant. The weight of my father, of the title, of what I could become. "You can't carry the world in the ring," he said, his voice steady. "Leave it behind and fight." But how could I leave behind a man who abandoned my life and now wanted to come back as if nothing had happened? The night before the final, I went to my mother's bar. She was there as usual, but her eyes were red. "He's in the hospital now, Jade," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Wants you to go." I felt a lump in my throat, but I swallowed the anger. "He doesn't deserve it," I replied, but my voice trembled. My mother held my hand. "Maybe not. But you deserve peace." Her words hit me like a punch, and for the first time I cried in front of her. Back at the apartment, I took my father's letter and read it again. He spoke of regret, of wasted time, of pride. Every word seemed like a lie but also a plea. I tore up the letter, but the emptiness in my chest didn't go away. I knew he would be in the final, and that terrified me more than Raquel. At the gym the next morning, Marcus handed me a pair of new gloves, red as blood. "To the champion," he said with a rare smile. I smiled back, but my heart was heavy. The ring was my refuge, but now it felt like a trap. And deep down, I knew that the real fight would not be against Raquel, but against the ghost that would be in the stands. The day of the final dawned with a gray sky, as if Texas itself knew of the storm that was coming. The gymnasium was packed, the air electric with shouts and applause. I was in the locker room tying my red gloves when Lena appeared. "You're ready, Jade," she said, her eyes shining with something that looked like pride. "But don't forget who you are." I nodded, but her words echoed in the emptiness I felt. When I entered the ring, the crowd exploded. Raquel was already there, tall and imposing, her black gloves shining under the lights. His eyes studied me as if looking for a weakness. I knew she was good, but I also knew I was different. "Let's see what you've got, Rebel," she said, her voice cold. I smiled, but my heart beat uncontrollably. Then I saw him. My father. In the front row, thin, pale, with an oxygen tube in his nose. Our eyes met, and for a second the world stopped. The bell rang and Rachel came with everything. Her punches were accurate, like hammering, and in the first round she landed me a jab that made my nose bleed. Marcus shouted from the corner, "Dodge, Jade. Use your head." But my head was on the man in the stands, on the years of abandonment, on the torn letter. In the second round I fought back, landing a hook that made Raquel retreat. The crowd roared and I felt the spark return. In the third round I was exhausted, but so was Raquel. His eyes showed tiredness, and I knew it was now or never. I dodged a blow and landed an uppercut that made her stagger. The referee stopped the fight and the gym erupted in applause. I won. I was the champion. But when I looked at the stands, my father was crying and something in me broke. I walked out of the ring with the belt in my hands, but my eyes were fixed on it. Marcus grabbed me by the arm. "You did what you needed to do," he said, his voice firm. But I wasn't sure. The victory seemed empty, and the man in the stands was a weight I couldn't ignore. After the fight, the gym was taken over by reporters, flashes and voices screaming my name. I held the belt, but it felt heavier than I imagined. My mother appeared, her eyes shining with pride, and hugged me tightly. "You did it, Jade," she whispered. But I couldn't smile. My father was approaching, slowly, leaning on a cane, the oxygen tube slung over his shoulder. The crowd opened up to him as if he knew something important was happening. "Jade," he said, his voice weak, almost a whisper. Her eyes, so similar to mine, were full of tears. I'm sorry." I wanted to scream, punch him, say it was too late. But my voice came out low, shaky. "Why now? Why did you come back?" He lowered his head, the weight of guilt visible in every wrinkle on his face. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted to see you champion." Marcus was by my side, silent, but his presence was like a pillar. My mother held my hand and I felt the warmth of her, the only home I really knew. "You don't have to do that now," she said quietly. But I knew I needed to. Not for him, but for me. "You've abandoned me," I said, the words cutting like knives. "And now what do you want? My pity?" He shook his head. "No. I just want you to be happy." I didn't know what to say. The gym, the belt, the crowd, everything seemed far away. My anger, my pain, was there, face to face with a man who was more of a stranger than a father. "I'm a champion," I said, my voice steady. "And I did it without you." He nodded, a tear streaming down his cheek. "I know." He turned and started to walk away, and something in me wanted to call him back, but I didn't. That night in my apartment, I looked at the belt on the table. It shone in the dim light, but it didn't fill the void. I knew the fight wasn't over. Not in the ring, but inside me. And for the first time, I wondered if breaking the rules meant breaking my own heart as well. The days after the final were strange. The city treated me like a hero, but I felt like an imposter. The belt was on my dresser, but I barely touched it. My mother called me every day, proud but worried. "Are you okay, Jade?" she asked, and I lied, saying yes. The truth was, I didn't know. The victory was supposed to be the end, but it felt like the beginning of something I didn't understand. I went to the hospital, against my will, against my anger. My father was there, weaker than in the final, his skin almost transparent. He smiled when he saw me, a smile that hurt. "You've come," he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't smile back. "I don't know why I'm here," I admitted, sitting in the chair next to the bed. He held my hand and I let him, even though I wanted to pull it. "You're strong, Jade. Stronger than I've ever been." He told me his story, bits and pieces I never knew. The addiction to gambling, the shame, the escape. Each word was a weight, but also an explanation. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "But I needed to tell you that I love you." I felt the tears burn my eyes, but I swallowed them. "You don't know what love is," I replied, but my voice cracked. He just nodded as if he agreed. When I left the hospital, the sky was clear, the stars shining like never before. I sat on the hood of my old car, staring into space. Lena called me, her voice full of life. "You're gone, champion. Shall we train?" I laughed, the first real laugh in days. "I'm thinking," I replied. But I knew that the ring was no longer the same. He had given me the title, but he had also shown me how much I still needed to fight for myself. That night, I wrote in Marcus's notebook. Not strategies, but a promise: be more than anger. I closed the notebook, feeling a weight leave my chest. The fight was not only in the ring, it was in life, and I was ready to start. Weeks later, I received the news: my father died. The hospital called in the morning, and the doctor's voice was gentle but distant. "He went in peace," he said. I hung up, sat on the floor of my apartment and cried. Not for him, but for everything we never had. The belt, on the dresser, seemed to watch me, a reminder of what I had achieved and what I had lost. I knew I would never forgive him, but I also knew he was no longer my burden. I returned to the gym with a new energy. Marcus greeted me with a look that said it all. "You look different," he said as I tied my gloves. "I'm trying," I replied with a smile. In the ring, I faced Lena in a sparring match, and for the first time I fought without anger. Every punch was clean, every move was mine. Lena laughed when we finished, sweaty and panting. "You're getting dangerous, Jade." The city was still talking about me, but I didn't need the applause anymore. I went to my mother's bar, and for the first time in years, we talked as friends. "You're my champion," she said, her eyes shining. I hugged her, feeling the home that had always been there. The past could no longer hold me back. I was Jade Collins, the boxer who broke the rules, and survived. But the turnaround came days later. Richard, the scout, came to me with an offer. The professional circuit, a chance to go beyond Austin. "But you need to fit in," he said, the same fake smile. I laughed loudly, surprising him. "I don't fit in, Richard. I break the rules." He blinked, confused, and I walked out of the office, my heart light. The title was mine, but the future? The future was mine to create. That night, under the starry Austin sky, I picked up Marcus's notebook and wrote one last line, "Champion of my own destiny." I closed the notebook and looked up at the stars, feeling the fire that was still burning in me. It wasn't anger, it wasn't pain. It was life. And I was ready for the next round.